So good evening, everybody. Thank you for coming to the spiritual practice series. My name is Susanna Wupong Calvert, and I'm really happy to have you join us today for the second in this series. Sorry, I've got way too many windows open, and I hope I'm not messing up this thing too much. And I'm here representing both the Richmond Ions community group as well as the Sanctuary of Earth, which if you were here last time, I would have told you about it. But I will do a brief refresher in a few minutes. But the goal of this series is to offer it in partnership with the Ions group to begin the conversation that to bridge the theoretical, empirical, and philosophical aspects of spirituality with people's lived experiences on these topics. And so we're going to be focusing on the practice side, and the Ions group focuses more on the theoretical and empirical and philosophical. So we're offering speakers with a variety of practices and beliefs who will offer us, hopefully broaden our sense of what the options are for spiritual practices so that we might each all find our individual path and connection in the way that suits us in our unique way and our interface with the divine. It's a perfect partnership with Ions, which of course focuses on the science of spirituality. And so we feel this is a perfect companion by focusing on the practice. And we are meeting the first Wednesday of every month at 7 p.m. Eastern time. And Richmond Ions meets both in person and on Zoom, a hybrid format, the third Saturday of the month at 10 a.m. So if you want to be part of that series and you haven't already, you can go to their website and sign up. Like the Richmond Ions community group, we are relying on donations to operate. So we'd very much appreciate a donation of any amount, but hopefully a minimum of $10 to help us offer these programs and even grow. The URL is on the slide. So a little bit about Sanctuary of Earth. Sanctuary of Earth is a brand new, very, very young and just starting out organization that was incorporated late last year, but has consisted of regular meetings for just over a year from among several of us here in Richmond and our colleagues in Bend, Oregon. The mission of the Sanctuary of Earth is to actualize human spiritual potential on Earth and also for Earth by providing the bridge between the cognitive and empirical to the lived, embodied, grounded, and practical. So we want to help everybody take, what we understand in our heads and then live it in our bodies and incorporate it in our lives. We see the world as a heavenly reality where peace, justice, harmony, care, and balance are available to all of humanity and all of Earth. And we want to make sure that everyone has access to that full spectra. In addition to this series, we'll eventually be creating beautiful, interactive, online skill development modules to help us expand our spiritual practices while also integrating the science of spirituality. That will happen in divine timing, so stay tuned. I'd like to welcome all of you. And if you haven't done so already, if you wouldn't mind, please putting in the chat where you are from and where you might have heard about this series. So I'd like to switch it over a little bit now and introduce our speaker. We have Matthew Sanderson, who is really wonderful practitioner and healer who I met, I guess it was about a year ago, through a friend of mine in California. Matthew is a teacher, mentor, guide, author, therapist, and shaman healer. And for over 25 years, he's been an instructor of energetic deep tissue bodywork, functional nutrition, meditation, and breathwork. I was just so impressed with his range of ability. He has created 3 biotech companies doing extensive R&D in neuro-acoustics, voice analysis, light sound therapies, and frequency enhanced agriculture. I mean, each one of those could be its own talk. Today, Matthew will focus his work on a comprehensive training program using breath, meditation, embodiment practices, and consciousness exploration, reminding students and clients how to be happy, healthy, and free. He helps people discover how to get more out of life, experiencing maximum enjoyment and growth simultaneously. He's a life guide, providing multi-dimensional guidance in all aspects of life, helping us all to reconnect to essence and true purpose. And so I asked him to talk about this, sort of an idea of a general spirit, what is a spiritual practice? What could it be? So he'll be talking about fundamental aspects of spiritual practice today. So we have 90 minutes for or till 8:30 for this program. And Matthew has invited questions and comments throughout the talk. So if you want to chime in at any point with something in the chat, or if you want to raise your hand, he'd be willing to entertain that. Or if you'd like, you can save your questions to the end, since we should have time for Q&A or discussion. Matt is also going to start us off with a meditation, which I realized after the fact that, gosh, we're talking about practice, we should have at least that in our sessions. So without further ado, I will turn it over to Matthew so he could share his wisdom and breadth of experience with us. Thank you, Matthew, for calling in from California. It's great to see you again. And thank you for your comments today.
Thank you, Susanna. And I want to also thank the Richmond Ions community and Sanctuary of Earth community. And I'm very grateful to be here today and to be invited to share some of my thoughts and experience on the spiritual path. And so to begin with, it's wonderful to start that conversation with an experience and a short meditation to bring us all into the present. And so I want to invite all of you to just take a few moments to close your eyes and tune into your body and your breath. You can just sit comfortably. Take a few deep breaths in through the nose and out through the mouth, letting go of tension in the body and feeling the quality of your breath and any sensations in the body, any tension that can be let go of as you exhale. And if you're sitting up straight, I invite you to lengthen the spine, feeling as though you're being pulled up by a string from the top of your head, aligning the spine and the central channel of energy that moves through it, and bringing the awareness all the way to the top of the head, using the breath to pull energy down into the body through that central channel, filling the body with light and energy, filling the body with all that we require, and then exhaling down into the earth through the root chakra, through the tailbone, connecting down into the earth and grounding our energy there. And then once again, breathing in from the top of the head, filling the body with all that we need and all that we require for perfect health and balance and vitality. And then exhaling and letting go of anything that no longer serves us, so that each inhale fills us with all that we need, and each exhale clears and transmutes and empties us of anything that we no longer need to hold on to. And then if we bring our attention and our awareness behind the eyes, imagine that you're sitting in the center of your head and relaxing all of the muscles around the eyes, relaxing the face, relaxing the eyeballs themselves, so that we can look through the closed eyes, through our eyelids, into the space in front of us. And notice what you see. You might see flickering pixels of light, or moving shapes of light and dark. Just notice what you see, and more importantly, become aware that you are the consciousness or the awareness that is looking. That you are the consciousness and the awareness that is breathing, pulling light into the body, exhaling and releasing down into the earth, feeling all the sensations of the body, feeling vibration in the fingertips or in the hands or anywhere you place your attention. Noticing that you are the awareness that is looking, that is feeling, and that is breathing. Noticing thoughts that arise, sensations in the body, and residing within the sensation of feeling the breath as it enters and exits, as it rises and falls. And noticing that the awareness becomes very focused as we look through the closed eyes, as we feel the sensations in the body and feel the sensation of the breath rising and falling. And then think of something that you're grateful for. Fill yourself with the feeling of gratitude for whatever this is. And notice how that feels in your body. And when you're ready, slowly open the eyes and maintain that awareness of being behind, being behind the eyes, being that awareness that is looking and breathing and feeling the sensations in the body, being aware of the entire body and any areas that are particularly calling out to you. And in this way, maintaining that awareness, that presence that is your essential nature. So this is a very short meditation that very quickly can bring us into a state of deeper presence, a softening into awareness and presence that is aware of the mind and not caught up in it, aware of the body and the sensations in it, and aware of the breath. And the fundamental practice that I teach is really based on cultivating that presence, using the breath as a way to stay in the moment, to stay conscious and aware of this moment and all of the dimensions of this moment, all the experiences that we're having. So it's a breathing practice that is both a practice of presence in each moment and also using the breath in particular ways to enhance our experience, to clear energy that gets caught up in our body, to stay present with our emotional experience and the passage of thoughts through the mind without getting caught up in them. And so when I was thinking about this conversation that we were going to have today, I realized how big it is. The fundamental aspects of the spiritual practice is an enormous subject. And so I broke it down into specific qualities of a spiritual practice that is both potent and comprehensive and also practical. And in today's world, it is very important that it becomes something that's practical. There's so much happening in our daily lives that the spiritual practice is something that if it stays on the mat, so to speak, or on the meditation cushion, it only offers us a certain limited benefit. And when it's something that we can incorporate into our moment-to-moment experience of life, then it becomes much more integral and comprehensive, and it leads to a transformation and becomes something that's very practical for us. So one of the aspects of the spiritual practice that is very important is some form of ritual, and this is seen in throughout all religions and spiritual paths and mystic paths. And ritual is something which combines intention with some form of action and brings prayer and intention into an activity. And so creating some form of ritual is a very important aspect. And this can be, this can take all kinds of different forms. You know, for some people that are following more nature-based traditions, it involves, you know, some sort of connection with nature and a ritual that involves an offering to nature or a connection to the natural world in some way. In others, it's more making an offering, burning incense, burning sage, lighting a candle, and that type of activity. The ritual needs to be something that speaks to us, that becomes personal for us, as opposed to something that is just routine. And it also should be something that we can do on a daily basis. So for me, what works really well is to start each day with a very specific ritual and routine. And I call it setting my field and setting the intention for the day. So if we wake up every morning and get right into the routine of the day, and pick up the phone and look at emails and get involved with the outer world very quickly. There's an experience that we have that our day begins with a intrusion of the outer world into our inner world. And one way to change that is to think about waking up every morning as really waking up deliberately and intentionally, and waking up more, waking up to bringing our essence into our body and into our day. So having a morning routine that we do first thing before anything else happens is a really good way to create that waking up process and to incorporate intention and prayer and breath into our day before it takes off in whatever direction it's going to go. And so thinking about that, having a morning routine that incorporates sitting in meditation or yoga or breath practices and prayer and intention allows us to create that field of awareness and consciousness that is something that it's like creating a baseline for ourselves. And then throughout the day, we have this baseline that we can come back to, and we can return to that place that we've established first thing in the morning. And I find that really helpful. So periodically through the day, I will go back to that meditative posture, that meditative awareness that I created first thing in the morning. And I'll also return to those intentions that I had, or those prayers. So that morning practice is a way to tune our consciousness and to think about and bring into our awareness the things that are important to us. And by having a meditative practice in the morning, it also allows us to empty the mind and allow whatever is present within the mind to show itself, so that we're aware of the things that are occupying us, or even the subconscious influences that are coming in. And it allows us to make the entire experience of the day more intentional. So one of the concepts that I use is based on quantum physics. I do a lot of work with physics and energy and frequency, and because the universe is a fractal manifestation and is holographic, if the spiritual practice is also that, then we begin to create a fractal of our practice. So what that means is that every day we have a practice that allows us to enter into a certain state of spiritual communion or meditative awareness. And throughout the day, we can return to that in little ways. And then also, maybe once a week, we go into a deeper practice that is much longer. And on a monthly basis, I incorporate an even deeper practice that might be a full day. And then periodically through the year, entering into a longer and deeper practice that might look like a retreat, where we're doing something for many days at a time or a whole week. And so that's one way to think about the influence of a practice being extended through time in this sort of fractal way. And it becomes integrated into our life through that routine and through that schedule. Another aspect of the spiritual practice that is really important is that concept of gratitude. And the reason I brought it into that meditation is that whenever we experience gratitude, the heart opens. And when the heart opens, there's greater connection and openness within our consciousness, within our energy, within us on all levels. So opening the heart through gratitude by being appreciative and grateful for any aspect of our life will create a positive energy within us. So if the spiritual practice is considered an attunement of our consciousness, then using the emotion of gratitude and cultivating that is a way to shift us out of negative thinking patterns and emotions that we don't necessarily want to be cultivating, negative emotions, you could say, although I don't believe any emotion is truly negative, into something which is more positive, more uplifting, more connective. And gratitude is a really big part of that. So cultivating these qualities of these emotional qualities within us is something that we can do anytime we want to shift our energy, our consciousness from a state that is not something that we want to be in into something which is a higher state of consciousness. And let's see. Another aspect of the spiritual practice that that I want to discuss is making it comprehensive. You know, we have this. The world is so full of distractions and pulling us out of the cultivation of being present and pulling us out of our bodies into thinking, into all of these obligations that we have or stresses in our life. And the spiritual practice becomes a smaller priority the larger those stresses become. And so one of the things that we can do to shift that is to recognize that our entire experience is ultimately an opportunity to embody the spiritual practice that we're following. And seeing all of the experience that we have during the day as opportunities to learn, opportunities to grow, opportunities to embody the qualities that our spiritual practice is aimed at cultivating. So integrating the practice into our daily life is incredibly important, because then we're not going on this roller coaster of, very pure, empty mind, deep spiritual practice. And then the rest of the time, we're simply in the thinking mind and in the human condition. Acknowledging that we are more than the human condition, and using the breath to stay present within our experience and stay connected to the earth and stay connected to our essential nature. In the practice of yoga, for instance, there are many different types of yogic practices. There are practices like Ashtanga, which is disciplining the mind. There's disciplining the body. There's the discipline of emotions, which is bhakti yoga. There's discipline of action, which is karma yoga. And when we look at all of them and as one cohesive practice of yoga, meaning union, then what happens in the mind, what happens in the body, what happens in the emotion, and what happens in our energy field is all implicitly connected. And we can start to use the body as an instrument to tell us what is happening on an emotional level, what's happening on an energetic level, and recognizing that the body is essentially an instrument for our consciousness. It is constantly giving us clues as to what's happening in here on subtle levels, on energetic levels. And being with those experiences, being with those sensations gives us a lot of information. And so loving the body is one thing, but really appreciating what it's trying to tell us on a daily basis is quite important, because it's constantly in communication with us if we allow it to be used as that instrument. Another aspect of that is that the body is like an antenna. And so putting it in different postures is going to help us to determine our state of consciousness. When you sit in a particular way, which is very relaxed and open, it's hard to, if we're just kind of slouching and sitting back, it's conducive to a certain state of consciousness, which is also very relaxed. And when we sit up and we use the body like an antenna and we lengthen the spine, we also can enter into a more focused state of consciousness. So using the body in different ways like that is an incredibly important part of my practice. My practice started when I was quite young with martial arts, and that taught me both an appreciation for breath and an appreciation for discipline and awareness of the emotion and of energy and of the body itself, and putting the body in different postures, like in yogic postures or in meditative postures, became something that I recognized was shifting my state of consciousness. And so using the body that way is a really powerful tool, because we have it with us all the time. And using the breath in that way is another powerful tool, because that is consistent. And if you are taking a few conscious breaths throughout the day and being fully present, and you start to cultivate more conscious breaths throughout the day, imagine if you only forgot a few times to breathe consciously, to breathe intentionally. So that's one thing that I practice very deeply, which is using the breath consciously, appreciating each breath, and using the breath to pull more and more of my essence into this body. And in shamanic work, there's one of the shamans that I work with breaks it down very simply. And he says, we can only control two things. We can control our thoughts and we can control our words. And those are the two most important things in that tradition. It's the Kuntanawa tradition of shamanic healing. And cultivating pure thoughts, cultivating higher thoughts, lifts our consciousness and keeps us attuned to higher states of consciousness, which allows us to use words with greater intention, as opposed to simply allowing whatever words come through our mouth. Because words are, if you think about words and intentional language, we take breath in, we give it vibration, and then we send it out through our language. And that is literally imprinting our environment with the vibration of our consciousness. And so words are literally invocations. And if we think about them intentionally in that way, that's why in Wiccan or pagan traditions, it relates to spelling is actually like a spell. You know, your words are an invocation and a prayer. We use prayer in specific practices to ask for things. We can also use prayer to give things, to offer our heart and our intentions and our love to each other, to those we care about, to the planet. But essentially, prayer is a communication. It's a communication that is ultimately continual. We're always in communication with the field. We're always in communication with this eternal and infinite presence that we call God or spirit. So the quality of our thoughts and the quality of our words determine the quality of that communication and what we are giving out to the world and giving out and sending out to one another. If we are implicitly connected and a part of this universal experience, we can't be separated. And so that communication is continual. So we can think about how deliberate is that communication? What are the thoughts that we are sending forward into the field? What are we seeding the field of human consciousness with, the collective consciousness of this planet with, and what are we receiving from it? So I think of the spiritual practices as a way to attune myself to whatever state of consciousness I wish to be in. And then use the breath and use the posture and use the embodiment to maintain that attunement. Another aspect of the spiritual practice that is really important is that it's joyful. It should be enjoyable. It shouldn't be a chore, you know, and the more enjoyable it is, the more often we're going to engage in it. And the more personal we make it, the more heartfelt it becomes, the deeper it becomes, and the more involved we become in it. So it's really about feeling. It's really about emotion. And the deeper our prayers are, the more emotion we have behind them, the more powerful they are. So I love the experience of being in prayer and have it become so powerful and so deep and meaningful that tears are streaming down my face, because that's when I'm really in it. That's when I feel the potency of that prayer. You know, the words give thought expression, and the emotion give it power, give it potency. So making it joyful, making it an emotional experience cultivates its potency. In Buddhist practice, when I was 15, I entered into a Buddhist practice and became involved with the Sangha, which is the Insight Meditation Group in Massachusetts. And I started going to meditations and retreats with them. And in Buddhist practice, there are the three refuges, and you take refuge in the Buddha, which is the ideal, the archetype, which embodies all of the wisdom of the Buddhist practice. And then we take refuge in the Dharma, which is the teachings of the practice. And then we take refuge in the Sangha, which is the community. And that introduces another aspect of the spiritual practice, which is very important to me, which is the cultivation of community. And in a lot of, there's a big difference between religion and the religious traditions and the more independent spiritual practice that a lot of people follow today, which is more personal and something that we do on our own. But involving community and creating community with which we can practice, with which we can enter into communion and into celebration of our spiritual nature is really powerful and a very important aspect of it, because we find that there is all of that support from the community that can help us to maintain our practice. And also when we come together in a spiritual practice, there's obviously a lot more potency there. And when many of us come together in prayer and in meditation, the practice can get very, very deep and powerful. So cultivating that community is an important aspect of it. Another aspect of my spiritual practice is chanting and singing, and bringing, using chanting and singing as a way to express gratitude and to also attune my consciousness to higher levels, to higher thought. And so the practice of singing and playing music is a really incredible way to empty the mind and enter into an open state, which is in communion with other people and with nature and all that is. And that's something that's used in traditions all around the world for that purpose. And not only does it allow me to empty the mind, but the words and the frequencies and the vibrations of chanting and singing also have a certain quality to them. So in some traditions, you're singing the names of God, for instance, and you are using specific mantras that have qualities to them that actually affect our state, our brain waves and our consciousness state in very interesting ways. And there are specific breathing practices that we can do within that as well. I would love to hear from any of you if you have any particular practices that you'd like to share, and open it up a little bit to conversation as well. If there are any things that I've shared that speak to you, or that you'd like to reflect on or share within your own experience.
Well, I'd love to invite people to raise their hands if they would like to share something. I will, while you're deciding whether you want to do that, I will just say, and when I say raise your hand, it might be best for you to use the reactions hand raise, because it'll move you to the top of the screen. So I don't want to miss you if you're waving your hand around. While you're thinking about that, I'll just give an appreciation to Matthew, because I have to admit that my motivation for the spiritual practice series is that I'm just so curious about other people, what other people do. And those of you who know my story, I've only 4.5 years been on a spiritual journey. And so all I know is my own practice, and I'm starting to get a sense of other people's. And so I just love hearing about what other people do, and that Matthew has so much structure in his practice. Mine is very unstructured. So I'd just like to see if anybody would like to raise their hand and share. Tina says, I love the simplicity of the Soham chant vocalization. Yeah. Okay, Linda, why don't you unmute? We'd love to hear from you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for this talk. My ritual is the first thing I do when I wake up is to grab my phone and, that's how I start my day. And I've just gotten into that pattern, and I am going to change it like right away. I've been taking notes, and to start the day with ritual, it just makes all the sense in the world. And I don't know how I've strayed so far away from doing something first thing upon waking up that would bring me closer to spirit and set my intention of the day. So I don't have anything to share as far as any really effective rituals, because I don't have one, but I'm seeing how I really need to. And so that's about it. I just wanted to share that. And I really already have gotten so much, so many good things that I want to start to incorporate into my life. So thank you for that inspiration.
Oh, thank you, Linda. I appreciate that. It inspires me to share a little bit more specifically what I do. So one of the aspects of my practice is dream work, and really acknowledging what the dream is. And what I dream at night is just as important as what I dream during the day. And so the first thing I do in the morning is actually just lie completely still and try to remember where I just was, where I was in my dream, and recall that as much as I can and write it down in a dream journal. And then I go outside and I sit in my backyard facing the sun. And I sit on a meditation cushion, or sometimes I'm standing and I'll do standing Qigong movements, which is just movement and breath. It's very simple, just gathering energy and breath and connecting to the earth, and giving thanks to the day, giving thanks for that the sun has risen again, and that I have another day that I can learn from and hopefully do it better than the day before. And then giving thanks for my family, for my children, for my wife, for my parents, for this life, and incorporating all of that gratitude into my morning prayer. And then sitting in emptiness and just noticing what thoughts come to me, because sometimes things will come to me that I've forgotten, things that I needed to put in the schedule that I didn't put in the schedule, and very banal things potentially, but important things that if I didn't create that space, I wouldn't necessarily remember. And another good thing to think about when I'm doing that is I think about the qualities that I want to embody for the day? What do I want to cultivate more of? What was I lacking the day before? What did I do that I could have done better? How could I have shown up more fully, or with more compassion, or with more love to the people in my life? And so I think about those things, and that gets my day off to a really good start.
And it seems like, Matthew, the way you move in the world. Suzanne in the chat says she dances to beautiful music as exercise and as spirit moves her. That's beautiful. And we have 2 questions, maybe first Lawrence, or at least a share. Lawrence.
Okay, thank you. Say, I just wanted to share that in the last 3 months, I have been waking at 5 o'clock. Sometimes earlier, and I don't need an alarm clock. I just wake up because I intend to. So I have an internal alarm clock that readies me, and I understand the importance of capturing inspired thought early in the morning and not being distracted by anything digital. Don't let that intercept your intuitive, natural intelligence. And when I'm writing a book that I have been endeavoring to do for years, and now I'm just about complete with it within this next 2 weeks. And it's been just like a miraculous opening for me, because I've been able to connect to my inspiration, and I'm able to capture thoughts in the moment. A lot of my thinking or ideas come in the shower, and I have a notepad nearby, and as soon as I get out of the shower, I write down these things, because they are fleeting moments of opportunity, and sometimes just out of the blue, and just incredibly brilliant, that give you segues into other areas of your imagination and possibilities and so on that you ordinarily would not access. And what I've found is that I've found my voice. I have a clear identity in my meditative process, and I can hear I hold a conversation between my higher self and the source of the inspiration. And it's all one. I mean, there is no separation. It's just a different level of harmonic frequency. So there are times when we are connected at much higher levels than others, but it's still the same self with a capital S, right? And by identifying with that, I'm giving myself permission to be totally aligned with it without any interference. And something along those lines, I'm sorry if I'm taking too long, but I was involved with a chanting ceremony, Hindu music and chanting and so on, which is outside my normal range. But we've been doing that for the last month or 2 on Thursday nights here in Bend. And one particular one where we're tuning into Lakshmi, for instance, the energy was just so rapturous that I was in tears. I mean, my heart was just flowing. And yet there was something that felt like it was a thorn in among that. And it only could be able to come up when I was in that state of rapture, because it would have been too deeply, I think, embedded to be noticed. And I noticed what it was. And it was something I had not forgiven
Mhm.
that has a 50-year history. It just got buried, you know. And I brought that up, and I made a pact with myself to clear that one up by writing to a certain person and letting them know that I appreciate the fact that we were able to maintain this wonderful relationship in spite of all of that, but I had forgotten ever to consciously forgive that person and myself.
Right.
And now I've done that. And I've written a letter, you know, a little card, and sent it off. And I found in one more person in my life I wanted to do that with. And I've just done that. And I can't tell you how freeing that is for me. And I just wanted to share with you, because I know, Matthew, you'll have things to say about that.
Oh, thank you, Lawrence. That's amazing. Yeah, there's lots to talk about there. The wee hours of the morning are such a potent time. You know, that for Buddhist practice, for instance, you know, we get up at 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the morning to meditate, because the sun hasn't risen yet, the solar energy and the human consciousness hasn't, you know, flooded the world yet. Most people are still asleep. And so things are very clear energetically, and it's a great time to receive inspiration. I have a really strange sleeping pattern. I get woken up every night at 2 a.m. I don't have an alarm either. In fact, I dislike alarms so much that even if I set one, I'll wake up 5 minutes before it goes off, because I don't want to hear it.
Yeah.
But I wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning almost every night, and I'm up, and instead of thinking, oh, I wish I was asleep, and struggle to get back to sleep, I use that time to meditate and to receive and to write. And it's a really powerful time for me. And when that process is over, it's very easy to fall asleep. It might be an hour or two later, but it's very easy for me to go back to sleep. And if I don't do that, I'll just lie there, you know, wishing I were sleeping and trying to fight it. And that I realized many years ago that doesn't work. So thank you for that.
I do something about that, and I give myself like 30 seconds or 40 seconds. And I say, if I'm not asleep, I'm getting up. Because if I'm going to sleep, I will be gone by then. But there's no point in just lying there wishing you were asleep. I mean, that's a waste of energy, isn't it?
Exactly. Thank
I'm
you.
also often awaken at 2 a.m. or plus or minus an hour. So Ryan, whose screen name is William, also had his hand up for a comment or a question.
Yes, I needed a good reminder about the morning practice. This is really good stuff. And also, Matthew, I'm a massage therapist, and I'm always trying to help people adjust their shoulders. And I couldn't help noticing that your shoulders are really relaxed. Anybody else notice that? So whatever you're doing, it's clearly helping you get comfortable there in your body. But I really liked the part, what really hit me was when you said that when you wake up in the morning, and if you use your phone, you're basically bringing the external in rather than, you know, shifting your attention inward and kind of keeping that going. That just really resonated so strongly with me. So I really appreciate that.
Oh, you're welcome. And as a fellow massage therapist, I'll share that one of the greatest ways that I saved my body while doing deep tissue body work was I started doing Tai Chi and in my martial arts practice when I was a teenager. And I started using body work as a Tai Chi practice. And really using the posture and the movement of body work as a dance. And maintaining my own posture and balance became really, really crucial, or I wouldn't, you know, I would have really damaged my body that way. So that was a really important part of my my massage work. and breath too, using your breath, not just having the client breathe in particular ways, but using my own breath as I was moving was really a big part of it too. It all became meditation. And so maybe think about your massage as a moving meditation and a dance, and it's easy to fall in love with it that way.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so provocative. And I'm just sitting here wondering if Ryan, do you do that, or is that something you maybe like to experiment with?
Yeah, I actually not Tai Chi, but since I do yoga and my foundation is there, I am kind of moving through yoga postures as I'm doing the massage. And I find that to be the way to go. And so I work in a lot of lunges instead of standing straight up. I'll be kind of sweeping through. And one of the things I love about it is that you can get a lot of range, across the table when you're transitioning through a lunge that way. And I find it's just much nicer on the body overall. And if you have a lot of practice with yoga, it doesn't really feel like you're adding a lot of work because your body is acclimated to being in, say, like a warrior two kind of posture. And if you're flowing through it, you're not, having to hold it either. So I find it to be, I often tell my clients that yoga has done more for my massage therapy than massage school did.
Well
Nice.
done. Thank you.
Thanks, Ryan. So Shavad has his hand up. Shavad.
Hi, Matthew. Thank you. I'd like to add, I find that part of my practice, and that continues all day long, is to keep the environment that I'm in for a considerable time free of electromagnetic fields, including magnetic fields, electric fields, and especially radio frequencies. And I find too many people, they really don't consider that, and it directly affects calcium in your body. That affects mood and anxiety, as well as it affects oxygen, and oxygen affects everything. So just a suggestion to be aware of the electromagnetic, omnipresence of all these different fields and how it affects things. Because when you're in various states of consciousness, they can be very dramatic, or very subtle. Depends on where you are and how strong the fields are around you. So especially if sleep sanctuary is very important. I'd like to also add your comment about waking up at 2 a.m. If you look back in the deep sleep science, there are 2 sleeps that we are, as humans, aware of. Not just a single sleep. There are 2 sleeps that we're born on this earth to take part in. So, but yeah, I use that as a primary aspect to for meditation and prayer and whatnot, and along with breathing and hape and whatnot. So yeah, but keeping an energetically clean indoor environment, turning your phone off, fully off, and turning off your Wi-Fi and all other sources, and hardwiring as much as possible, makes it for a continuous good energetic field than otherwise.
Right. That's right. That's right.
Yeah, one of the other things that brings up for me is the practice being outside in nature, because nature holds that field for us. Nature reminds our bodies of its natural state, and without all of those imprinting, electromagnetic fields and things that are pressing on us, nature is in and of itself a healer. It's a healing environment. And so the sanctuary of nature is a really powerful place to do any practice, because of that reminder for our energy fields of what is the natural state. And we breathe with the trees. The trees are breathing with us and for us, and we for them. So Yeah. Thank you, Siobhan.
So Joy has her hand up.
Thank you, Matthew. This has been just so beautiful, and your presence tells it all. And really enjoying what you're sharing and reminding us how important rituals are, and getting out in nature is, being with our true nature. We're not separate from nature. So anytime that we can dive deep out in the natural world. I'm really interested in personal stories. And so I'm admiring at such an age of 15 or 14 that you were, directed to this path. And I'd love to just know if there was somebody that influenced you, or how were you guided in this way? And what have you seen as a, I don't know, personal story that has changed your life?
Sure, I'll share it briefly. What happened for me was I had childhood asthma, and it was exertional asthma. So I loved to run, and I ran track and played soccer and cross country, and I would overdo it. And there were times when I would literally pass out. I would collapse on the ground and pass out, and I would find myself floating above my body. And I was, 7, 8 years old. And then in those experiences, I realized that I was more than my physical body, that I was consciousness, and that I was able to move in and out of it. And unfortunately, those were, fairly traumatic ways of moving in and out of it and having that realization. But what happened when I was 8 years old was, one day I lay down to go to sleep, and I heard a voice, and it was breathing in a particular way. I heard a breath, essentially. And I started following that breathing pattern. And it was a very gentle, rhythmic breathing pattern. And I found myself very soon out of my body. And I had this out-of-body experience that what I started to call night school. And I began to be instructed in these out-of-body states about meditation and breathing, and reminding me of who we are as consciousness. So that was my first introduction. And then I began practicing in various styles of martial arts. I met my first martial arts teacher when I was 12, and I just loved it. I'd fallen in love with Bruce Lee when I was very young, and loved all of those things. So I became very devoted to that practice. And then I became involved in insight meditation, Vipassana training as a teenager. Went to college and realized that I wanted to follow a spiritual path as opposed to the corporate path of becoming an environmental lawyer and doing that. I couldn't imagine myself in an office after all of that schooling. And so I went on a spiritual journey around the world, and became a healer and a massage therapist and a life coach and a nutritionist, and started doing work with people in my 20s. But my dream was to swim with dolphins. And I grew up in Maine, and there aren't any dolphins up there. So I ended up in Hawaii. And I had this vision of opening a healing center and taking people swimming with wild dolphins. And I met my former wife, and we did that. We started doing dolphin retreats and combining yoga and meditation and fasting with taking people swimming with wild dolphins, and opened up a retreat center on the Big Island, and did that for 10 years, and incorporated all of these practices and teachings into a variety of different retreats and experiences, nature experiences and initiations for people. And that's where I was introduced to shamanic work through a group of people that were associated with Terence McKenna. And these groups started coming several times a year and introduced me to plant medicine and psychedelic therapy. And so I began training in shamanic work at that point. That was in the early 2000s. And so that before then, all my path was entirely focused on breath and meditation, and using breath and meditative practices and embodiment practices to raise consciousness. And since then, I also began incorporating shamanic tools and psychedelic assisted therapy, and that's what I do now. I do psychedelic assisted therapy training. I teach psychotherapists how to use these different medicines for healing, and incorporating spiritual practice into therapeutic work. And I hold retreats and teach those things. And that's how I met Susanna as well. So
That's beautiful. I'm so glad I asked, and I'm having my first mushroom medicine experience this weekend in LA. So
yay.
I'm pretty excited.
Well, I can personally attest to how magical it is working with Matthew. So, maybe if you want, Matthew, you could put your, I don't know, if you have a website or contact information, you
Sure.
can share with people in the chat in case they want to get on your mailing list or contact you directly or whatever. And, there's also wonderful options here in Central Virginia. And it's really so wonderful what you're doing, Matthew. And it feels like more and more people are waking up to these sorts of opportunities. And which leads me to a question. But I wanted to just add, we have about 10 minutes left. Just wanted to ask if you wanted to open it up to questions now, or if there was more you wanted to say. I want to make sure you have as much time as you want to share what you want to share.
Oh, no, I'd love to continue with questions. I really love doing it this way. Yeah.
Okay, well, my question has to do, because I loved hearing your list, because as I said, my practice is very unstructured, and it's sort of whatever feels like it's being thrust upon me in the moment, honestly. But I was surprised you didn't mention healing as part of a spiritual practice, or do you feel that that's separate, or is that integrated in what you currently do, or your daily practice, or how would you characterize that?
In what sense?
This idea that being born into our bodies is traumatic in the sense that we're separated from our creator. And maybe we don't sense it immediately when we're babies, but pretty soon we start to believe that we are separate and alone, and to some degree alone. And that just walking the earth in modern society can be various degrees of traumatic, and just remembering our true nature of being spiritual beings, having a human experience requires, to me, some healing. So I guess, I don't know, I just wonder what your response is to that.
No, that's a wonderful question. So the spiritual path is really one of acknowledging the human condition as a condition. It is, it's not our true condition. It's simply the condition we find ourselves in, and it's a partial condition. It's an illusion of a separateness, and the healing happens as we raise our consciousness, and as we do things such as what Lawrence was talking about with regard to forgiveness, noticing the pain, the pangs that come that are keeping us from a fully open heart and an open field of compassion and love for ourselves. So the healing happens as we forgive ourselves for the things that we feel we have done where we have done harm, and also forgiving others, because there's an acknowledgement also that everyone's on the path. Everyone is on a path of healing and awakening, and everyone is also conditioned in different ways. So for instance, if we have experienced a traumatic childhood, or have separation from our parents because of various things, acknowledging that our parents also were born into an environment that wasn't necessarily whole or healthy, and that they were also conditioned. And we only know what we know. And so finding forgiveness for them and finding compassion for not just our parents and grandparents and all of our ancestors, because we take on the unhealed aspects of our ancestry, of our lineage. That's what we do. And the purpose is to heal that. And we can't heal that if we hold judgment and resentment toward others, and specifically toward our own ancestors. So healing also for me happens spontaneously through the rising of consciousness. So if we focus on raising consciousness, and if we focus on for specifically with regard to, for instance, psychedelic therapy work and shamanic work, we're not healing the symptoms. We are focusing on creating an environment in which the healing happens spontaneously. So we're creating an environment of wholeness. We're creating an environment which embodies such qualities of love and joy and compassion and peace that wholeness is discovered simply by being in that environment. So so a lot of times people come to me that are looking for healing, and one way to address that is to allow someone to go through a process of, looking at all of the things that they have experienced that are traumatic, and finding the emotions that are there, and healing it through that expanded state of consciousness, which allows for those emotions to come through us and release the repressed emotion that we feel, because we all have judgment of these different emotions. If we judge anger, if we judge ourselves for and have guilt and shame and all of those things, if we raise consciousness through these practices and through prayer and through accessing higher states of consciousness, then what happens is that the healing takes place because we discover wholeness through the experience. So the spiritual practice is something that allows us to cultivate certain states of consciousness, and using the breath in particular is really key. So, holotropic breath work, any sort of pranayamic practice, is the intention is to shift consciousness so that we can find the inner healer and allow our own higher consciousness to come in. And so that's one way of thinking about healing. Then there's also healing where you're in an environment where there's a healer, but I want to encourage that the healing happens through ourselves. When we heal ourselves, it becomes lasting. As a Reiki instructor, we can heal a condition, we can heal a symptom, but if the root cause of that isn't addressed, and if a person doesn't acknowledge the deeper levels of emotion and energy or thought patterns that are held, the condition's just going to return. So we have to uncover and reveal those deeper conditions and causes in order to truly heal.
Thank you. It's 8:25, and so I just want to be mindful of the time. We'd like to have a couple minutes for closing. And I noticed Lawrence has his hand up. So Lawrence, do you have a question that can be asked and answered in 3 minutes?
Yeah, even less. Thank you, Matthew, because I have a very dear friend who's known to a few of us, who's been having real serious health issues. And she said her blood work is very scary and all the rest of that. And I was getting that she really needed it as a spiritual healing. It's not a medical issue. It's a spiritual, psychological issue. And what you were saying about you need to be able to heal yourself, I think is really true. Because at first I was thinking maybe she needed a psychic healer, something like that. But it can be invasive. And I think that what you're saying about healing oneself and having the right orientation to that is really key. But whether she knows how to do that is another question. I wonder if she could talk with you about that.
Of course, yeah,
Okay.
I welcome that.
I'll pass your contact information on to her then, okay?
Yes,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Healing happens in the mind. Healing happens in the heart. Healing happens in the emotion. And then it happens in the body.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do we have your contact information?
I put my website there. I can also put an email in the
Okay,
chat.
thank
It's
you.
lucidmind.io is the website.
It's in the chat, Lawrence. You can
Okay,
see it.
okay, thank you.
Okay, so if there are not any additional burning questions, I'm a real stickler from being on time if at all possible. And so I'd like to wrap it up by thanking Matthew for this really beautiful and insightful words of wisdom and perspective, such a broad perspective born from decades of practice and commitment to walking the walk, not just talking the talk. And so thank you, Matthew, for taking the time to be with us tonight and I think really giving some great food for thought and more importantly, practices to all of us. I just want to remind everybody that our new organization is relying on donations to get up and running and sustain and grow. We feel we have a very important mission, as I mentioned earlier, and we hope that you will consider making a donation that is within your means by going to our website, sanctuaryoferearth.org/donate. I want to remind you that our next talk will be the first Wednesday of February 2023. I made sure to change the date, the year. It's going to be Gary Goldberg, who's a retired physician who did brain trauma injury. And since he's retired, he's really been doing a deep dive into the science of consciousness. So he's also one of our organizing members of the Sanctuary of Earth. He's here in Richmond. And his topic is Kabbalah and the divided brain, maintaining equanimity and integration in encountering the stress of fragmentation. So I think that's a long title for saying that he's going to be talking about the science of consciousness and panpsychism. And there's so much science going on around that. It's so fascinating and interesting. This is going to be a little bit less of a practice talk, but we have an agreement with the IONS group that, we might toggle back and forth based on people's availability, et cetera. But I think he'll speak to the practice as well. So I hope you'll put that in your calendars and share it as well. We'll put it on our Facebook page and it'll go out in the IONS group and hopefully the Perry Center. I don't believe we have any Perry Center people here today. And would love for you to come back and to bring some friends with you. We also are going to be putting these talks onto YouTube and on our Facebook page, so they'll be archived and shareable. So you can come back and revisit these wonderful talks. I know that I probably will want to revisit and think about some of the ideas presented in a little more detail later. Again, Matthew's website is lucidmind.io. So please check him out. He's a wonderful healer and an amazing person, as you can tell. And I didn't invite him all the way from California because for any other reason except to share that with you. So thank you again, Matthew. Thank you, Sanctuary of Earth and IONS folks. Thank you, everyone else who might have joined in tonight. Hope you have a wonderful, amazing 2023. And it's great to be with you this evening.
Thank you,
Susanna.
Thanks, everyone. Mm-hmm.
Thanks,
Thank
Matthew.
you.
Thank you, Matthew. That was perfect. I really appreciate it.
That was great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew. Wonderful.
it was great to see you. And again, if next time you're out and sort of anywhere in this area, and it might be something where I might join in, I hope you'll let me know, because I'd love to, work with you again.
Absolutely. Likewise, if you're ever out on the West Coast, look me up.
Yeah, yeah. I imagine I'll be out to see Vicky again before long. And so it might be, maybe she and I will take a road trip or something.
Some of us are from Bend, Oregon, so we'd love to see you sometime if you're nearby.
Oh, I love Bend, Oregon. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you can probably
be in
invite him
touch.
up.
Yeah, I'll be in touch. Where do you live?
Right now I live in Sebastopol, California, Northern
Oh,
California.
okay, cool. Yeah, good.
So
Okay, Matthew.
beautiful.
Thank you
Yeah.
so much.
Okay, take
I
care.
look
Good
forward to
night.
your book, Lawrence.
All right, thank you so much. That's my home.